Now, coalition governments are meant to reflect the diverse will of the people, but often in South Africa we see that they are chaotic and the political infighting affecting service delivery. Of course, coalition governments are dominant on the political scene, especially in local government, given the amount of hung municipalities that were delivered by voters in 2021 during the local government elections. Now, SALGA, the South African Local Government Association, is saying that transparency will help, and these coalition partners need to publish their agreements. We're joined by the president of SALGA, Bheke Stofile. He's with us via Zoom. Mr. Stofile, thank you very much. Firstly, there were many experts in 2021 saying that something had to be done, and SALGA could spearhead outlining some protocols for the good workings of a coalition government. There is a framework, but what is happening with that, firstly?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us. Yes, as you know, that 2016 to 2021, coalition government in local government were 27, and when we learn from that, we then work towards drafting what we call it a framework in which we have been engaged those that supposed to effect it insofar as legislatures are concerned. And the framework is still in the circulation, and I know for a fact that we have made a presentation to both committees of Parliament that are in charge with the responsibility of playing oversight over cooperative governance and traditional affairs. So it is our belief that everybody has a framework, and we have reasons why we have crafted the framework and put it to the public for public to have an engagement.
Yeah. Couldn't it be used informally by coalitions anyway? And could it make up for what many see as some immaturity on the part of politicians that often start squabbling for position soon after these coalitions are formed? And it seems like often the focus is not on service delivery, on doing the work.
That is why we are saying what we have experienced, and you'll know that 2016 to 2021 were very fewer parties that were participating in the coalition government. There were not more than 3. Today, because it has drawn a lot of interest, because there's a lot of main parties and municipalities that are involved, now it has risen to 80, and you've got more than 5 political parties forming coalition. And that alone, it can contribute towards a lack of coordination, and that is why we are then saying it's important after parties concluded agreements. Those agreements must be taken out of the behind table and behind curtain discussions, and then be brought before public, and for public to know what are the key areas of the agreements. Because the public is only being aware when there's a difficulty in a municipality, when there's a threat to coalition to collapse. And we are raising this because it's not really a new thing, because if you read Municipal Structures Act, it permits and outline the local government is a three-legged pot. It's community, it's council, it's administration, and therefore community. It ought to have a right to know what are the agreed areas and how those areas that they've agreed with are factored into the IDP, which is a strategic document of the municipality, and so that the community can participate in holding each one that they have signed a contract accountable of the contract that they have signed.
Why do you think the parties have been loath to make these agreements public already?
No, not as far as we understand, because if they do make it public, we don't know what public we are talking about, because if it's public, it should be factored in the IDP. And if it's factored in the IDP, there should be accountability of it. What we have been seeing parties fighting about is about positions and the right of individual who participate in the coalition to have a right to employ whoever that they want to employ. And the fight is more about employing, not about the speed to render service to communities.
Yeah.
And that is what we are saying.
So indeed, we're seeing it all becomes about who gets what position, who's dominant, who's not dominant, and what role the parties will play. And we've seen very tiny parties become kingmakers in these coalitions. So you're saying if the agreement was public or transparent and everybody could look at that, then we could hold those politicians to account and say you didn't agree, or you said that the positions would be in place, but your areas of agreement are actually around this sort of service delivery, these sort of principles, and that's what's important.
What we have been noticing since the dawn of coalition, communities become spectators in their own livelihood, in contributing towards changing their lives. And they only see when this or that mayor or speaker has been voted out. And the public is not aware what were the contractual relations when the parties entered into such agreements. So that is why we are saying those agreements, it's important for them to be brought to the front. And that is why we also said, already you have an instrument in law. After establishment of municipalities, municipality after elections, MEC in the province are empowered in terms of Section 12 notice and Section 16 to determine a type of a municipality. Part of that type of municipality, it can be also used as an instrument wherein you allow parties that have agreed to enter into agreement insofar as coalition is concerned, to participate in making that municipality, rather than being an issue that is negotiated outside and is not guided by any instrument, in which that instrument, it must be in the best interest of society.
Can you make this tangible? If there had been transparency, how would that change what's happening right now in Johannesburg, for example, which is one of the chaotic coalitions at the moment?
All coalitions, they've got problems. And one of the problems, the first thing that society must accept, and parties must also agree, when you enter into election trail, you individually use your manifesto and you lobby individual members of society to vote for you on the basis of your manifesto. And therefore, when you form coalition, and I will assume that different manifestos will be brought together and be put as an agreement. And that agreement be brought into the IDP as an instrument that it can make individuals to be held accountable, as an instrument that is permissible by law, so that as you report back to your communities are aware of areas of agreement because they have been reflected in the IDP. And therefore, you are then judged on the basis of the performance on the areas that you have agreed on. It has been taking place currently in the country is that parties, they are disagreeing on the party political the differences, not necessarily on what it should have been implemented in dealing with the challenges that the communities are facing. So yes, the coalitions by its nature and design, if they are not properly structured, properly governed, guided, they are bound to be involved in chaos. Let me make one last point with regard to this. Let me show you an example of a practical example in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality. And if you use Section 12 notice and you use the framework that coalition act and the framework that we have proposed and put to public, it then means after elections, out of the elections in Nelson Mandela Bay in the current moment, DA will have 4 seats, ANC will have 4 seats, EFF will have 1 seat, and the community organization in Nelson Mandela will have 1 seat. It means literally you'll have 4 parties that are involved in the coalition. Vis-a-vis X number of parties that are involved today in the coalition in that municipality. And then in that process, you then agree. How do you then separate responsibilities and separate legislature from executive? And how do you hold one another accountable? And within that context. So I'm saying, yes, it is workable. It's something that individuals must put all their energy around it and make it work, because it can work. And of course, know that as you enter into government, you are not representing your party, you are representing the community that you have sold your manifesto to, and they've bought into your manifesto.
I like the way you put it, that communities then are no longer just spectators looking in at what the politicians are doing and not even understanding what they agreed upon initially. Thank you very much, Bheke Stofile, South African Local Government Association President.